All right, so the subject today is on the uh, Monroe focus levels and the use of hemisync for supporting dream yoga and the uh, everything that's being covered here in the Bardo series. I am in a public place, so apologies for the background noise. But I didn't want to miss this. Didn't want to cancel the class because I think we skipped one like 2 weeks ago. So I'm trying to stay on track. Up to this point, we've done just for a brief recap, we've done the contemplations on the preliminaries. So contemplation on suffering, contemplation on death, developing bodhicitta or the spirit of awakening. So that's engaging this teaching for the purpose or the benefit of helping sentient beings become awakened, orienting the practice towards that. After the preliminaries, we spent 2 weeks on the direct, I think it was longer actually, 3 weeks on the direct introduction to the nature of mind. So in Tibetan Buddhism, that's called pointing out instructions. In Zen, there's different terms for it. In Zen, it's often called like the backward step or the direct pointing to the Buddha nature. The idea is that through the direct introduction series, you get a clear understanding of awareness, and you begin to um, get clear on the nature of mind. So everything I usually say about experience, reality, mind, all being the same thing, these are direct pointing instructions. Another element in this series is the dream yoga, the Bardo yoga. So that's developing the capacity to be awake as you fall asleep or have a continuity of consciousness sustained as you fall asleep. And the specific tools or technologies that support that, I think there's probably all kinds of new chronic and binaural beats that people use, but the tried and true original technology is called hemisync, and it was developed by an American telecommunications entrepreneur and consciousness explorer named Robert Monroe. Bob Monroe is one of my favorite people, like of all time, in the field of spirituality and consciousness exploration. I'd say his Journeys trilogy is single-handedly the best thing ever written. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily point to non-duality. That's the only caveat or the only, I guess you could say, shortcoming of it. But that wasn't his path or where these experiences were taking him. But as far as getting direct understanding, insight, contact and experience with the soul, the higher self, and I'd go as far as to say even what is happening on Earth. What really is this whole living, dying thing? And we've all heard people talk about near-death experiences and afterlife states, and many of us may have glimpses of that or have had glimpses of it, or these types of things open up from the use of psychedelics or plant medicines that makes them very clear. The shamans have always talked about this. Yogananda, all the great spiritual teachers of the former eras have spoken about a variety of planes and how the process of um, reincarnation occurs, what fuels it. Buddhism and many of the Eastern religions, they address what it is that fuels it. They say it's habitual tendencies born of ignorance, karma, essentially. The same way that your habits from earlier in your life condition the habits you have now, condition the habits that will the exercising of those habits in the future. The same process or phenomena occurs over incarnations, over lives. But the mechanics of how a birth actually occurs, of how a death occurs, are the types of subjects discussed in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the American Book of the Dead, and in the works of Robert Monroe. I'll mention one particularly profound subject that Bob talks about in his second book. So in the first one, he has no this particular understanding was not present. Since he had developed the ability to go out of body nightly, like he had thousands of these out of body experiences, he began to observe the dying process of other people while out of body, and he coined the term. Firstly of all, he coined the term out of body. Previously, it was just astral projection. Like before the 60s, it was all astral projection. In the second book, he discovers this phenomena that he calls the belief systems territories. So he said that the beliefs of humans not only condition the dying process and what appears in the dying process, but it also conditions the reality which arises after the fact. So in near-death studies, where you look at near-death experiences, people's reports, you find that they're often characterized by whatever their religious beliefs are. So the Christians will say Jesus appeared, the Muslims will say the Archangel Gabriel appeared or the prophet appeared. The Buddhists will say Padmasambhava or the deities appeared, right? So that's uniform. But what Bob found to be particularly interesting was that he noticed the beliefs, religious beliefs, people held during their lives would condition these realities that were constructed out of the collective thoughts of millions of people. So he found that the Christian heavens, the Muslim heavens, the Buddhist heavens, all of these places existed, but they existed as a result of the accumulated power of belief. What you find in lucid dreaming and in the many of the astral planes is that the realities there are thought responsive. So in the waking state, if I think of a coin, it doesn't just appear. Or if I think of a fruit, obviously, it doesn't appear. But in the astral planes, the it's appearing before you, or suddenly you're interacting with that. So, and this was kind of somber realization that he had. He found that in this process of the cycle of reincarnation on Earth, that for many lives, people would just move back and forth between the Earth and the belief system's territories. And, and this is also what is talked about in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, that if first the clear light isn't recognized, if secondly the peaceful deities or the Bardo Guides are not recognized, and thirdly, if the wrathful Bardo Guides are not recognized as manifestations of your own nature, then you'll identify with the non-physical body and the non-physical environment that you're in. You'll take the appearances to be real, and that will result in a subsequent rebirth. So that will result in what the Tibetan Book of the Dead calls entering the womb gate. Apparently, the womb gate, the moment right before you the consciousness enters a womb and then goes through the gestation period with the fetal development, that is, I believe, the final chance to recognize the clear light and realize your nature. So what Bob observed was that people would pass away, they'd end up in these belief systems territories, they'd be there for some time, and their time in these thought generated realities are absolute paradises. There's no suffering. They're very different than the human experience, and they're fitting of the terms heavens, everlasting peace, these sorts of things. But what he found was that often, at some point, a person would begin to crave a return to Earth, like getting bored of those afterlife destinations, or remembering that there were certain things that they wanted to do as humans that they were not able to do in their previous incarnation. And that desire brings them back to the Earth cycle. They choose another life here, or they get attracted to taking a rebirth. The promise of the Tibetan Book of the Dead is that by recognizing the clear light and by becoming having this illumination level lucidity, realizing your true nature, from that point, the choosing of a rebirth out of volition and service presence of the clarity of mind and lucidity. What often happens is once the fearsome manifestations appear, just like a dream, you may fall into a kind of nightmarish or a reactionary state. Specifically going with this. Okay, this is a good story because and this is from Far Journeys. It captures this cyclical thing of samsara and how it's fueled by craving very well. By awakening and seeing that the craving is not actually real, not actually there, seeing that the suffering is not actually real, not actually there. Like in the Heart Sutra, there are no ears, are no eyes, no tongues, no mind, no body, no realm of sight, no realm of mind. It's this realization that essentially awakens you from the dream of being asleep and the dream of identification with those things, with the body. past life memory that Bob recovers, and he explains. By the way, some of these ideas are very out there, so I don't expect I don't expect all of you to believe them or them to be believed at all. But anyways, so Bob gets a past life recall, and he's experiencing this in a out of body state. Like basically, one of the Bardo guides gave him an information packet, and when he unpacked this information bit, this whole recall occurred, and it was like reliving it. Yeah, communicate. So, uh, in this experience, Bob finds himself as a type of swirl being, like a formless being. Like he doesn't actually have a body. It's just this kind of swirl of energy and consciousness. And he has a friend who's also a swirl of energy and consciousness. And believe it or not, they're on this like interdimensional tour of our solar system. And what happens is as they pass the Earth, the shipman or the captain of the ship says, "Hey, you got to be careful about these radiations coming from the Earth. They're very attractive. There's a lot going on down there. So make sure you and collective, um, yeah, basically collective thought resonance. Yeah, so imagine like not being from this world and then kind of and like getting a glimpse of what's going on down on Earth, and then you're like, oh, whoa, that's really cool. I want to check that out. So he told everyone to be on guard for this, the captain. But Bob's friend or past life swirl Bob's friend uh got a whiff of this Earth collective thought field, and he was like, wow, there's a lot going on down there. I mean, we don't have these kinds of things where we're from. I want to check it out. And the captain's like, damn it. You know, I try to warn you about this, but you know, okay. So yeah, this character, Bob calls him BB. He gets very like excited. He's like, yeah, I really want to go. And this captain of the ship is then called the entry director. And he helps this swirl being choose a particular body to incarnate in. It's to recap it, it's like the entry director was like, yeah, India, lots of openings. Beverly Hills, Manhattan, not so many openings. You're gonna have to wait. But India, Africa, China, we get you in right away, right away. And the guy was like, no, I'll wait. And it even indicates the whole new age concept of like soul contracts and things like that. Basically, the entry director like pulled up this opened this like program thing and was like, okay, you need to agree to this and agree to this and agree to this, because once you go down there, you're not going to remember any of it. Like in order to actually generate a human consciousness down there, you have to shut down this consciousness. You're not going to remember anything. Your multidimensional perception will be gone. It's the ultimate trip. And BB, the character, is like, I am. And then he gets launched into the womb of a pregnant 14-year-old African American woman in the Bronx, being born on a linoleum floor. And that was the beginning of his sojourn and cycle on Earth. Not Bob, his friend. So the interesting thing why I'm explaining this whole story was because that after the swirl being's incarnation ended, after he died on Earth, he began to take on the qualities of the Earth and human consciousness. So when he made it back to that spaceship, essentially, the first thing he told Bob was like, no, we can't go back to our world yet. You know, I didn't get to experience being a woman. There's still so many things that I want to experience. I have to go back. I have to go back. And the entry director is like, they got him. Like, this place always does this to people. It just gets you. And he wasn't having it. He wasn't hearing it. Entry director was like you already had your round. Like, if you go again, we can't guarantee that you'll make it back here. We might lose you completely. And BB was convicted. He was like he wanted to come back. So he comes back, takes rebirth as a woman in some other period of history, and suffered all the types of things that women suffered in war, like when an invading tribe would come. So, and the third, now BB is back to the space station for a second time, right? And Bob's like, hey, when are you going to be done with all this, man? We have to go home. We don't belong here. And now with the second round, more trauma happened. There were more intense experiences in that incarnation, and the defilements became much stronger. Now, even though he's in spirit, he's saying to Bob, I need to go back as a man. I need to come back. I need to go back as a warlord. I need to kill all those people. What they did to me was awful. I need to go back. I want to pick a life of war. So entry director says, okay, fine. Shoom, send him back down. Incarnates as a warlord, kills a bunch of people, and dies in battle. And then after that life ended, he wasn't even able to make it back to that station. He wasn't able to make it back to Bob and the entry director. And so the entry director is like, Bob, you should go down and get him. He's in the afterlife. He's in the in-between state. And so Bob projects his consciousness. And this is not Bob as a person, right? This is Bob as a swirl. This is Bob before he became a human. He goes into the afterlife destinations to find his friend and his friends on Earth, and he was just killed on the battlefield, and he's walking around with all the ghosts and everything, and they don't know if they're dead or alive or whatever. And Bob comes to him and says, hey, like, follow the light. We got to go back. We got to go back to where we came from. We got to go back home. And the guy says, what home? And who are you? Bob was like, what do you mean, what home and who am I? Like, it's only been 3 rounds. And the guy's like not comprehending it. He's like, what are you talking? What are you talking about? The enemy is coming, and now the Bardo simulation is beginning. He's in the state of amnesia. He's living out the extinguishing of the habitual tendencies and the karmas that were accumulated in that life. And that was that. So this being from another reality was and where it came from. What Bob observed is that often beings come from other, yeah, beings come from other reality systems, what we would consider angelic or different forms of non-physical. And because of the nature of the earth, there's the learning occurs in the in each incarnation. And when sufficient learning has been accumulated, something that Bob termed escape velocity begins to set in. So it means you start to become dispassionate about the human experience. You start to seek something other than the world of sensual and material pleasures and affairs. All of you have that. So all of you have sufficient escape velocity in the sense that you've broken from the conventional world. The conventional world that people are so engrossed in and basically hypnotized by. The person with them the same way or to such a degree. So what Bob found was that from the moment a person begins to incarnate here, that the levels of them which exist outside time, I call them the Bardo Guides, right? Or the emissaries of the higher self. From the moment that the incarnating cycle begins here, these guides are attempting to help us in our waking life, in our dreams, in our out-of-body experiences, in our psychedelic experiences, and in near-death experiences. So the idea is that there is a organizing principle behind synchronicity. Like the fact that you're interested in these things is not an accident. The fact that you had certain awakenings is not an accident. The fact that you may have totally been unplugged from this conventional system, even for a short period of time, that was not an accident. The fact that you met an awakened or an enlightened person or studied under a person like that, not an accident. There is an organizing, vastly intelligent principle that is helping us. So Bob found that this higher self principle, he calls it the I there. He didn't like to use the word soul because soul is like this amorphous thing of light, and he found that it was a much more complex. It was much more complex than that. I've also found that to be the case. So he called it the I there, or the it of me. And that through this whole cycle of rebirth on the earth, the whole time, the higher self, the divine spark that you could say is one with the logos or is one with the creative intelligence of the universe, that the dreamer of us has been attempting to get our attention the whole time attempting to help us process certain lessons so that sufficient escape velocity can be accumulated and we can awaken from the cycle of birth and death. So the Tibetans called these guides the peaceful and wrathful manifestations. Other traditions call it other things. Bob called it the his other incarnations, or the those beings which essentially manage the mechanics of the soul, attempting to wake up all the sleeping parts of itself spread out through space and time in the cycle of existence. A final point before we wrap up here, and then I'll touch a little bit on the focus levels. Bob Monroe said there was one primary reason for people coming here. One reason above all the other reasons. And that is to meet and become a graduate of the Earth learning system. He didn't see this world as a nihilistic prison. He saw it as a learning program, a consciousness development program, a school. So that one could gather information and experience that would help the exercising of activities at the soul level. Yeah, yeah. Bob actually said, because at a certain level, OB, you're outside time, so you see beings popping in and out in different periods of history. Like, we see things happening linearly, but from that vantage point, it's not occurring like that at all. How exactly that works is hard to wrap my head around, but I have seen some experience some level of that. What he found was that the beings on their final round on Earth, basically the types of beings like before they become a Buddha, he said from the moment that they reached a certain amount of escape velocity, it took 7 lives before they had this final incarnation. Which surprisingly is exactly what's said in Buddhism. From when you become a stream enter first stage of enlightenment to the end, 7 lives. Bob said that they radiated a kind of light and tranquility that was not perceivable anywhere else in the OB out-of-body observable universe. So that there was good reason for people to come here. 1, to meet beings like that. 2, to possibly become one. To go through the whole drama and learning of being a human in order to essentially graduate or leave with more than what was had when a person entered the learning system. Earth learning system simulation, probably as many people would put it today. Yeah, and then Bob found also that when people took their final rebirth or their final run on the Earth cycle, that they disappeared from the observable universe. He couldn't find them after they had their last round. Whereas all types of other beings, he was able to detect them, see what existence they went to after. But this one type of being, which he called the last timer, was no longer detectable to him. So in the chat here, what is it gone? I mean, most of you should be able to see it. I posted the link from YouTube, and there was also a playlist of all of the focus levels or all of the hemisync tapes. That's pirated, so the quality might not be as good, but you can get them from hemisync.com. You only need 3 if you want to play with this or use them. Focus 10 helps you sustain awareness as you fall asleep. It helps you begin to gain more experience in that, more experience in time in that place in the spectrum of consciousness. Usually you fall asleep before you get into hypnagogia. Focus 10 helps you get into hypnagogia. One of the things that can happen with focus 10 is that you click out, you just fall asleep. If you find that happening repeatedly, you can change your posture and do focus 10, sitting upright or having some level of reclining. And from there, you'll be able to extend and experience more hypnagogia. Hypnagogia is just the state that occurs like as you're falling asleep. You experience all this like vivid imagery. Mental pictures become very clear. It's considered a generally hallucinatory state. But the way that you enter a dream with full lucidity is by mastering hypnagogia. So by becoming familiar, very, very familiar with it, and focus 10 allows you to do that because it uses the brainwave frequencies that will promote the sleeping of the body while the mind stays awake. So it's called mind awake, body asleep. That's what focus 10 is actually referred to as, mind awake, body asleep. The term focus, like focus 10, focus 12 in the Monroe system, is just referring to these points on the spectrum of consciousness. So I think like focus 8 is the waking state, something like that. 10 is mind awake, body asleep. Focus 21, for example, is a full astral projection. So it's just a number system for what can occur on the spectrum of consciousness. Yeah, so something that you can begin to experiment with is using focus 10. If you want, you can use it for the next 3 days, either as you fall asleep or if you're doing wake back to bed, meaning you sleep for a few hours, you wake up, read about lucid dreaming or OBE, and then you go back to sleep with the intention to have a lucid dream or an out-of-body experience. As you're falling asleep, you can have the focus 10 frequencies playing. You just play it from YouTube. You want to gain more seconds or minutes in these non-ordinary states. That will help with the dream yoga. The reason that the door to the dream yoga is so, you're like, I've had like 2 lucid dreams in my whole life. I don't know if I'll be able to do that or how that would even work. The way that it works is that you gradually get closer and closer to that door and you stay in that liminal space. You get more minutes, more seconds, more time in that space. And then gradually how to open the door becomes clearer. So what you can do besides the focus 10 is that once the hypnagogic imagery appears, like once you start to get hyper real, vivid imagery as you're falling asleep, you focus on a specific part of one of the images. So let's say like this Diet Coke appears in the hypnagogia. It's random, anything can appear, you know. All of you remember seeing weird stuff as you fall asleep. The way to enter a lucid dream with full consciousness is to focus on some particular of one of the images. That what that does is it makes the mind stay awake enough. That's all that happens just by focusing on one particular thing. It's like you're turning on that function of awareness and lucidity. And the next thing that happens is that particularized that point of focus then opens up and you appear in the dreamscape. I've done it many, many times. So the first step is to experience more hypnagogia, and the second step is to relax efficiently in hypnagogia while focusing on a particular point, and then bang, you become lucid. The best way to do it is wake back to bed. Fall asleep for 4 hours, 5 hours, wake up, read about lucid dreaming, go back to sleep, wait for the hypnagogia, and then pick a particular section of an image. I'll describe to you exactly how this has happened before. I'm falling asleep, this image of the stained glass window, like a church window, it starts to get, initially it's like a faint image, you know, it's just there. But then it starts to get more vivid, more vivid, more vivid. And I was aware what was happening, so I just continued to let this image become more vivid, let my body fall deeper into sleep. And eventually what was just initially a faint image that into what actually appeared as a tomb of saints, like Christian saints. And they're all like in the floors and whatever. That's how you hypnagogia phase of consciousness state. The reason it hasn't happened is because you didn't know to focus on a particular part of that image. As it was becoming crystallized, I just focused on one of the shards of the stained glass window, and then bang, it clicked into the dreamscape. Yeah, so it's not actually a matter of capacity, in my opinion, for most of us. It's just we don't know how to do it. And we don't have enough time in hypnagogia to be able to execute these like we're just not familiar with the territory. But you get more time in hypnagogia, you start to have these hyper real images happen. You're now opening the gate of lucid dreaming. Good books to revisit: Teachings of Don Juan, Carlos Castaneda; Art of Dreaming, Carlos Castaneda. Pretty much anything by Carlos Castaneda is fantastic. Whether it really happened or not, I don't know. But nonetheless, great writer. Just incredible. Teachings of Don Juan is like one of the best books ever. So yeah. So I think that's it, everybody. I would take questions, but I have to get going. And I hope the background noise wasn't too loud or annoying for everybody. I'm gonna post this either tonight or tomorrow. So if you want to revisit it, you're welcome to. And yeah, that's about it. Is there anyone here who's not getting the Bardo emails? David, are you getting them?
I don't think I got one recently.
Okay,
When did you send the last one out?
like 2 days ago.
I don't think I got it, no.
Okay. So I'll make sure I add you back to the list, and then I'll add you to the list, and then I'll send you the previous weeks. But I think everyone else here is good. Yeah. Didn't get this week. I definitely sent it this week. Okay. Well, I'll send it to you again anyways, Lauren. So all right, everyone. Thanks for coming to the sit. See all of you Sunday or next Wednesday.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Ryan. Take
See you,
care,
Lauren.
everyone.
See you, James, Michael, Nicole.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, Lauren.